first commission night out of this year, so welcome everyone. We're gonna start with a moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance, and after we do that, then I'll turn and we'll have a warm welcome before we get started with the agenda. So if you could join me in standing for a moment of silence, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And next we will have roll call.
Commissioner Allen. Present. Commissioner Kelly. Commissioner Jones. Here. Commissioner Lanier.
Present.
Commissioner O'Connor. Commissioner Reppart.
Here.
And Mayor Bliss.
And Mayor Bliss.
I'm here too. And then can I get a motion to excuse Commissioner O'Connor?
So moved.
Support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Carries. All right, so to start us off today, or tonight I should say, and before we get to our first opportunity for public comment, I would like to turn to my colleagues in the 3rd Ward to welcome you, and then also I'll have Commissioner Allen invite up Pastor Emmett to give a few words of welcome as well. So commissioners, you want to say a few words?
Sure. Actually, you probably should, Commissioner. This is your neck of the... Okay. Well, I'd just like to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and thank you to Oakdale for welcoming us and opening up your doors. And I have this wonderful pound cake that was gifted to me, and I'm excited to meet the maker of this, Flavorful Pound Cakes and Treats. So where's Bruce? I don't see him. Okay,
Are you gonna share with
did
us?
he just drop? I don't know. I want to taste it first, and if I want all of, no, I'll share. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Commissioner?
Yeah, my mic's not working.
Oh, there.
Test. Oh, there it goes. It didn't have an on-off button. So interestingly enough, 25 years ago when my wife and I moved to Grand Rapids, we joined this church and started a small nonprofit right around the corner called Oakdale Neighbors. And little did I know that 25 years after starting that small little organization that I would be sitting here with you tonight. So welcome to this 3rd Ward for the Community Night Out, and welcome to Oakdale Park Church. And I'd like to ask Pastor Emmett Smith, the pastor here, to come up and say a few words of welcome as well.
Not the football player.
Emmett Harrison, I'm sorry. It's been a long day, folks. Pastor Emmett Harrison, I apologize.
I hate to, maybe I should pull this out.
Yeah, that's
Either way, I'm going to have my back to some people. But I'd like to maybe turn this way, just sort of sideways. But just to say welcome to Commissioners' Night Out, to our wonderful mayor and to all of the commissioners and all of the dignitaries and department heads and all of the folks who came out to make this evening a really community-focused evening so that we can come together and do what we need to do to build our city and push ourselves forward. So we want to just let you know that you're welcome. The staff, myself and Pastor Jones and the rest of the staff, the paid staff of the Ministry Center here, welcome you this evening, and we just want you to make yourselves at home. To all of our neighbors and friends, we are happy to open our doors to be a part of this great event. So thank you and welcome again.
Thank you, Pastor. All right, so next will be our first opportunity for public comment. So if you haven't been to one of our commission meetings in the past, let me walk you through our process and our agenda. So we have 3 opportunities for public comment. The very first one is if you want to speak about something that we're actually voting on tonight. So earlier during the day, we had a number of standing commission meetings, including subcommittees, so fiscal committee, community development appointments, and then our committee of the whole. During those meetings, we talked about a number of issues and we voted on issues, and those are on our agenda tonight under our consent agenda. So the first opportunity for public comment is for anything that we're voting on. Then we have a scheduled public hearing on a request by Ferris Coffee and Nut. So if you're here to speak about that request for Ferris, then I'm going to ask you to hold tight until I open up that public hearing. And then if you're here to speak about something that is not on our agenda, that opportunity for public comment is at the very end of the agenda. So tonight, I'll start with the first opportunity for public comment. A couple of rules that we have. We ask that you come to the microphone, that you speak in the microphone, that you speak to us. So you're here to speak to this elected body. We'll give you up to 3 minutes to speak. We ask that you share your name, the city that you live in, and then also what item on the agenda you're speaking about. So under the agenda, hopefully you have a hard copy of that. For instance, if you're here to speak about something on fiscal committee, you can say A3, and then that will let us know what you want to talk about. Okay, so I'll open up this first opportunity for public comment. So if you're here to speak about something on the agenda that we are voting on tonight, I welcome you to come forward. And is that me that's getting that? Okay.
We all should turn on.
Yeah, maybe we should shut them off when we're not using them. So I'll open up this first opportunity for public comment. If you're here to speak on something we're voting on, come forward. Welcome.
Jim Howe, City of Grand Rapids. I'm talking about C10. As mentioned this morning, this property is being developed by a for-profit developer. And in his speech, he mentioned that in his last, one of the other properties that he developed is no longer affordable housing. It's always fun when they share such wonderful news like that when they're asking for a pilot. Also to point out on their website, they have a blurb saying that they've been in business long enough that many of the original developed properties, including Hidden Creek, I would assume, have reached their end of life of initial debt and equity life cycles, have been strategically repositioning the properties to ensure quality housing development is maintained for years to come. Now, it was surprising to me to hear that Ruth and Joe just met this developer today. And when they mentioned community, he came to the Neighborhood Association board meeting, I remember that, but there was no community engagement conversations about what this property will look like. And I know we need affordable housing, especially for our seniors, especially in our ward, so I'm not against the project. And I'm grateful that he took the option to pay into the fund. Side note, did we name that fund yet? What it's going to be called? Is that part of the management team's job that you're approving tonight? Just wondering, because I'd like to make sure affordable's in the name, because we always have that trouble. So I know he's building it up, he's taking the advantage of the density bonus to build higher, 4 stories. So if there's anything we could do if they come back to the city to encourage them to hold those affordable units for a longer period of time, I'd be for that, because they have a record of not doing that as a company. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is named Affordable Housing Fund. All right, others who wish to be heard on items that we're voting on tonight?
Good evening, fellow citizens. City Hall is the house of the people. Watchdog Miller reporting. Thanks to Comic Book Macmillan, her comic book agenda has no dollar figures again. I counted 21 check marks where dollar figures should have been, but aren't. Why? Next, for starters, Jefferson is a key word boundary street here, 3rd and 1st. Sounds like a good and goofy-looking bank, but anyway, named for a slaveholder, an alleged Sally Hemings rapist, and the cowardly first governor of Virginia who surrendered Richmond to the British without a fight. That's Jefferson. Let's change it. How about a classy boulevard name such as Bishop Braga Boulevard? No city bus came here tonight. The City Hall is no longer a public square with all the buses kicked out some 14 years ago, June 14, 2004. Jewish supremacists put up their Jap-Downgerly menorah, crashing Christmas every year, but our buses don't get back. Next year marks the 400th anniversary of the vicious Dutch slave ship of 1619. When do we invite the various reverends around the country to just getting us basic security? 11.1, I'm suspicious of something called Springstead Waters. where you are, rolling $45 million to turn perfectly good blue waters white. Next, the Veterans Facility. It's been around since 1887. We're going to be kicked out of there. They're going to eliminate 75% of the beds in the state, moving over somewhere north of Selfridge. No bus routes out there. At the hearing, the only guy who showed up was actually some kind of a landscaping consultant. Nobody from that Michigan Veterans Home out in Monroe even showed up. They take away your paycheck. It's 95% of your paycheck. It's really, I spent cumulatively some 24 hours there, and in no way, when walking around those grounds, do I see those buildings as being obsolete. Just nobody is paying attention to this. Let's keep the beds we have. It's basic civil right. Every veteran should have his own room. Why? Because every veteran has a different style in TV and all sorts of gadgets, just to keep your sanity. Each as a basic civil right, each veteran should have his own room. I'll go into a little bit more on what travesty, what happened on Saturday. Do we need to bring in a Reverend Al just to have security? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right. Anyone else wish to be heard on items that we're voting on tonight? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead. Oh, you want to speak to something we're voting on? Yes, yep.
I was Paul Visosky,
Yes.
Grand Rapids. That there was going to be a discussion or some comments on the 3000 Monroe project. Is that not correct?
It's on our next.
I did not see it on the agenda.
Yes, it's under ordinances. So it's ordinance number 2. So yes, you can speak to that.
I can at
Yes.
this time?
Yeah?
May I have permission to approach and
Sure.
hand some
Yes.
cards over to you?
Absolutely, Paul. Yeah. Thank you.
I apologize for speaking in half and broken sentences, not enough time to say all that should be said. Your Honor, may I approach? I did, thank you. Contrary to previous testimony, this terrain is wetlands. We're talking about the VA property that the building is going to, that the nursing facility is going to be built on. The entire section of this 15-acre forest is wetlands and is home to every species of flora, fauna, with the exception, as far as I know, of bear, moose, and elk. To my knowledge, core samples are not relevant in assessing wetlands. Wetlands are determined by wetland delineation surveys, which are documented during the growing season. This is a large systemic ecosystem. The construction of a massive French drain directly through the middle of this terrain will do irreparable damage to both sides of this enormous ditch, which is proposed to be constructed at a length of about 900 feet north and south, and as close to our house as they can get. And you can see that by the photographs where that dashed line runs past our bedroom is where the proposed ditch is going to be. We have many trees bordering the edge of our property along the route of the French drainage ditch. The 12-foot deep trench will sever the roots of those trees and they will perish, and apparently without recompense. Is there evidence that the DEQ has determined that this particular area is not a wetlands, and have they signed off on the project? I would like to see the dates and methods of the wetland delineation survey, along with a comprehensive list of each plant species identified and reconciled with the typical Michigan wetland federally listed, threatened, endangered, proposed, and candidate species. This should include insects and special plants. It is also true that neither myself or any neighbor with whom I am familiar with was notified of this undertaking prior to February of 2018. By the time we learned of this project, it was a done deal. I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to have my wife Carol Ann finish for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Carol Visosky. As you will see, or have seen from the photos, our bedroom will now look down upon and over the parking lot to and through the windows of the patients under care with no opportunity for a privacy screen. We will also be entertained with a continual light and sound show from delivery trucks, vans, ambulances, employees, and numerous other visitors throughout the night. Some will pass through and some will park under our windows. There are no security measures to prevent unwanted trespassers from our property, which you can see is only several feet from the nursing facility. I will close with a regrettable issue. Misinformation is being disseminated regarding this project. It was announced to VA residents and government officials that neighbors, including myself, have not only been advised as to the details of this project, but that we enthusiastically endorse it. There is nothing further from the truth. Neither myself nor any other neighborhood resident has ever been approached, to my knowledge, in this regard by any agency or government official, not one. I am pleading with the mayor and commissioners to postpone this project until such a time as a proper debate and analysis regarding the collateral damage to my property and the general disruption and upheaval to the neighborhood in general. If it cannot be demonstrated that the wetlands delineation survey was not done during the middle of the growing season, I would hope that this in itself would be reason to put on the brakes. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Carol. Others who wish to be heard?
Hi, John Rothwell, 2nd Ward. I did not know that was on the agenda tonight for my lack of insight, but living down the street from that project and driving by, my old theory goes is why we pave over paradise when you put up a parking lot. And you've heard me say that before. I'm not against growth. I'm not against building. We need that. But driving around other major cities, Detroit, Chicago, I look around Grand Rapids and I've paid special attention to it with other projects. And we still have some undeveloped places in this city. This is a federal government takeover of, I'm going to use the word snafu. And we know the waste of money. You know, I really hate to agree with this, but Watchdog Miller and I agree on something for once. And, you know, Commissioner Kelly, Commissioner Jones, you know where the property is. You're part of that commission. It's part of the Riverside Park. It's undeveloped. It is a wetland. It is a floodland there before the flood walls went up in the dam. You know, so let's take a good look at what's on that property and in that area before we let the federal government decide what we have, as the city and the state still have a say over what's going on, and just put it on hold for a minute and take a better look at what's going on. Don't be bullied by the big dog. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, others who wish to be heard? Hi, welcome.
Hello, I'm Adam Doublestein. I'm with Tower Pinkster, and I am part of the design team for the new veterans facility. I just wanted to provide a couple comments. I know there are major concerns, and so we'd just like to address those. First of all, I wanted to assure the community, you as the commissioners, that we're doing our diligence on the site design. What we've done so far is that we have checked the national registry, the Michigan registry, as well as the city registry, and the site does not fall within floodplain. There are no wetlands in the area of our project that are currently identified. So we do understand that there is concern, and our intention moving forward is to engage an additional consultant to further the analysis of the site. I also wanted to mention that we have performed several community engagement efforts. There's been a few that have been at the home, and then we've done a couple in the community as well. So we welcome input, and again, we're trying to preserve the site as much as we can. We've also located pockets of tree growth that we're designing around. We're taking that into account. We're also making other design considerations to consider the neighborhood. So, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank
We
you.
may when we get to that item on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, others who wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close that opportunity for public comment, and we will move on to approval of our minutes. And these are our minutes from our last meeting on February 20th. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All right, commissioners, any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. We have no petitions and communications tonight, so that will take us to reports of city officers, and we have 2 items tonight.
First is Comptroller's report for the period of February 14, 2018 through February 27, 2018 in the amount of $13,069,137.83.
That is received and filed.
And then the Treasurer's report for the period of February 10th, 2018 through February 23rd, 2018.
And that is also received and filed. All right, next that will take us to our consent agenda. And on our consent agenda, as I said earlier, are items that we talked about earlier today and where we, during our subcommittee and committee of the whole meetings, where we voted on them unanimously. So with one voice vote tonight, we will adopt all of the items on the consent agenda. So can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All right, commissioners, any questions, comments? We had a full day today, in addition to 2 briefings and a meeting with our Mayor's Youth Council. All right, so seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to our ordinances to be adopted, and we have 2 ordinances tonight.
Ordinance amending Section 1 of the Budget Ordinance 2017-36 for fiscal year 2018, Amendment Number 15.
So moved. Support.
All right, Commissioner Allen, you want to tell us about this?
Yeah, and again, since I see a lot of new faces here that don't typically appear at our public meetings, each year the city, I'm the chair of the fiscal committee, and each year the city passes a budget, well north of $150 million in operating. We also put aside some reserves in case something happens that is outside the budget process. So anytime the fiscal department needs to do any expenditures outside that budgetary process, we have to pass what's called a budgetary amendment. And they could be as little as $1,000. That's the level that we take this. So we actually had 8 budgetary amendments this morning. 2 were of note. One is acceptance of a grant for the Parks and Recreation Department from the Wegge Foundation. It's the second year we're doing this. It's called Canoe Mobile, to rent canoes to help our kids from Grand Rapids Public Schools experience canoeing on the water. Last year they had to do it in the lagoon around Riverside Park. Hopefully this year they can get on the river. The goal was to get, I believe it was every child in Grand Rapids Public Schools, or every senior?
Every
8th grader. Yeah, that's the age that they start to change.
It's about 1,000 students.
Yeah, it's about 1,000 students. So there's that grant. And then the next I'd like to highlight, which I think is some really creative work that was done both with our Environmental Services Department and our HR department. We have utility aid positions that we've been having a hard time filling. Believe it or not, we're having a hard time finding employees to fill these jobs. And so what they did was put together some temporary seasonal help for this summer that folks could apply to. And then once they go through the summer and get their feet wet in the water department, they would have the opportunity to be hired on as full-time staff. So that was a budgetary amendment as well. So kudos to the Environmental Services Department. And if you're interested in working for the city, contact HR because these positions are open.
Thank you. All right, commissioners, any questions or comments? All right, this is a roll call vote tonight.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Lanier?
Yes.
Commissioner Repart?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
and Mayor Bliss.
Yes, and can I get a motion to give this immediate effect?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, next that will take us to an ordinance to rezone 3000 Monroe Avenue Northwest to Special District Planned Redevelopment District.
So moved.
Support.
All right, Commissioner Kelly, you want to tell us about this?
Yes, this is the rezoning of the area that we know as the Veterans Facility, and it's kind of loud. Commissioner Jones and I attended a meeting last week after hearing of concerns from neighbors and advocates for the veterans. It was very well attended, and we pretty much just listened, and I counted up, there were 32 questions asked by the veterans, and I felt that they were getting the answers that they deserved and needed to better understand the project. There were concerns, just briefly, and I hope you can add to this, Commissioner, if there's, I'm not going to go through all 32, but about the slope, about about the continuum of care that would be kept there on that site, about meeting VA guidelines, about the transition of people from one building to another, keeping places like their bistro and their chapel, multi-purpose rooms. And I left feeling that there was a tremendous amount of support on the part of veterans for this change, particularly because it will provide a living arrangement that is less institutional and more family-like. There was one request which was granted, that they be kept informed about the architectural details, and that will happen. There are already meetings planned for that, and I also understand that there will be a wetlands study given the concerns of the residents nearby. Commissioner, is there anything?
I think you pretty much covered it. To your point, there was a very robust turnout from from residents of the home, and they were full of questions, and they were both members of the state of Michigan who were there from the Veteran Affairs Department, as well as folks who work on site at the Veterans Home. And so overall, again, Commissioner Kelly and I, we sat, we listened, and felt as if, again, the questions that were being asked were answered, and you were getting thumbs up from veterans who were there. So I do have a few questions, though, as we move forward regarding this. So,
Would you like me to ask someone?
please, if you could have someone come up. That'd be great.
So, so if you want to come back up, I know there's several representatives from the facility here tonight, and I'll allow some time for some questions. So Commissioner Jones, if you want to start.
Yep, you probably haven't had a chance to see this, I take it. Did you get a copy, or?
I just received a copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you could maybe go through this and explain, if you could give some detail, and also wanting to know the capacity or the capability to actually revise the plan at all to address some of the issues that, I'm sorry, your last name?
Paul and Carol.
Vasowski? The Vasowskis have.
Sure. Okay, so this is the first time I'm seeing this book.
Yep.
And I did not put the book together, so would you like to speak? Okay.
No, go ahead.
So the first page on the inside cover shows essentially the property line, and it's noted a proposed French drain. And the purpose of the French drain is there is areas of surface water on the site. We've done geotechnical investigation, and our anticipation is that we do have to handle surface water from the site. So what we are proposing is a collection point. It aligns with some of the parking and ring road requirements. And so that would be the collection point, and then that water would be routed around the site and make its way across to the river. So that's the first picture. The second picture is an older site plan. Our site plan has changed since this. And we're happy to provide an updated site plan if you'd like to see the current state. Looks like the fourth page is a view of this individual's property, showing, roughly the property line. Then they have a picture of, it looks like what would be the back of their property, showing vegetation in the, what looks like summertime. The next page is showing proximity of their residence to the property line. And so it is close. Their residence is close to the property line, and our attempt, if you refer back to the site plan, the changes that we've made is we've attempted to shift the new development further west and allow for that natural buffer to maintain. And so we've rerouted the road. One other improvement that we've done is the VA design guidelines request that parking be outboard. So as you approach the building, your vehicle would turn and park away from the structure. So what we've done is reversed that to benefit the neighborhood. So vehicles will approach and approach the building. So that's another improvement that we made to address this.
So you're saying for this particular one, this is again the picture that shows the side of the house.
Correct.
We're talking about something that would probably be farther this way, where you would have the natural buffer that would exist to separate the project from their property?
Correct. To the extent that we're able to, we are shifting the site.
Okay.
Correct. The next page is also a picture looking west into the property. And again, there are some pictures which appear to be summer or springtime. One showing approximately the property line, I assume. I can't tell, from this picture exactly where that is, or this other picture of vegetation. So.
The reason I asked to go through this is I would really, really like to see a concerted effort made where you're in very close contact with the Wasowskis and looking to find some common ground. I can understand their concern, yet I understand that there is the opportunity for the veterans to have a world-class facility. And I don't want to get in the way of that because from what we've seen, very impressive, and from what we heard from the veterans, there's a desire to experience that type of living. And so what I would like to see is really, again, a very concerted effort made to stay in contact and to work with the neighbors to see if we can find some common ground. And, obviously to try to stay as, obviously it's going to be close, but let's see if we can get it a little, not as close. So just wanted to put that out there.
Sure. Yep. Commissioner, my name is James Redford. I have the privilege of serving our veterans as the director of the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency. I'm a resident mayor of the city of East Grand Rapids. Sorry about that, but at any rate, in addition to your concern, that is our concern as well. And I can tell you, at a meeting some weeks ago, and I don't know exactly when it was, Mr. Vlask and I had a chance. How do you pronounce your title? Wasowski. Mr. Wasowski, I gave him my business card. I said, if you have issues, please get a hold of me. He sent me an email on Friday, and he was very concerned about everything that's going on. And I said, I'm forwarding this to my staff, and I need to talk to our architects and engineers, and I will get back with you. And I sent that on Friday evening. He thanked me for the courtesy of a reply because he's a gentleman, and his wife couldn't be more courteous to deal with and to speak with. And today, we scheduled a 4-hour meeting with our architects. And so I haven't yet had the chance to reply, but one of my replies would have been, Paul, we're going to have a wetlands check done on it. And so that's one of the steps. But I would also like both Mr. Wasowski and Mrs. Wasowski and other residents to know that on March 20th, there will be a Veterans Facility Board Authority meeting at the Grand Rapids home at 10 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, I expect that we're going to be hosting an open forum, an open house. If people want to talk, I'm going to ask our architectural team to be there with us, but to come in, have a chance. It's 2 weeks from, I think, today, if my math is correct. So we are committed to having an active dialogue, to make this as positive of a relationship as is humanly possible. We are enormously grateful for 131 years of support from this city and from this community and from our neighbors. And they have been wonderful stewards of our natural resources there. We seek to be as well, but we also seek to build the facility in a way that will give the director of this agency or the people who have the privilege of doing this job 50 years from now the flexibility needed, as well as us being able to continue to serve in the best way possible. So we are trying. We are going to continue to try. I sent an email at about 5 o'clock today to a veterans advocate saying, I know we've communicated in the past, and I know we can communicate better, and we're going to be trying to do that at every step of the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you for being here and
Thank
your
you,
service.
ma'am.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Commissioners, do you have other questions? Commissioner Linay?
Thank you both for being here. I have a couple questions. You mentioned that with the buffer, the language you used was, we're going to do our best or something along those lines, and further west. I'm just curious, with your new site plan, and if you have that, I would like to see it, about how far west are you looking at creating the buffer? That's the first question. And then I'm curious about engagement. So when we did have the public hearing, I'm assuming the reason that my colleagues, Commissioners Kelly and Jones, attended this meeting at the Veterans Facility was because we had heard during public comment that they had not been engaged. And then we also heard that neighbors had not been engaged. And so I think it's great that we've now had a conversation with the vets. I think it's time now to have some conversations with the neighborhood. Personally, my philosophy on projects like this is that you start with those things, and so it's a struggle for me to hear neighbors saying that they haven't been engaged properly, and that potentially this March 20th engagement opportunity with the open house you just spoke of is coming after an approval. So it kind of ends the leverage that the public would have if they wanted to lobby their commissioners for a change. So I'm just curious to hear what your perspective is on the engagement that you've done, because all I've heard is that there hadn't been any besides now this meeting that took place last week with the veterans.
And Commissioner, I'm looking over to Commissioner Kelly because I do believe there were earlier meetings.
That's why I'm asking the question,
Yeah,
so I'm expecting a response about when and how, because it's interesting that people don't feel like they've been engaged, including the people who's residing on site.
Yeah.
There were two meetings that I attended personally with the Creston Community Association, as well as other members of our staff. At the first meeting, it was attended by the architectural team with enlargements of the design and the explanation of, and explanations by myself. I answered questions, others answered questions, I'm sure much more intelligently and succinctly than I did, but we attempted to communicate at both of those meetings. During the process of the determination of standing up the facility authority itself, there was a work group appointed by the governor, appointed by me with the approval of the governor. It was bicameral, bipartisan. It met in Lansing from June until August. Proposed legislation was introduced in the fall of 2016. The legislative body of the state of Michigan voted 106-2 to approve the creation of the authority, and 37-0 in the Senate to also approve the authority and to authorize $108 million for the expenditures. We have had multiple facility authority meetings, which are public meetings. The meetings are posted. They have been largely in I wish they were largely in Grand Rapids, because then I wouldn't have to go to Lansing that day. But they're largely in Lansing because there are representatives from throughout the state. We've had discussions with the residents, and we have attempted unsuccessfully, at least as far as the level of contact with our neighbors, to also engage them. It was my understanding, Commissioner, that when a public meeting were to take place, that by city ordinance, citizens within a certain radius would receive a mail notification. Perhaps we relied on that too much, but I can tell you we are committed, we are listening, and the approval, my understanding of the ordinance modification today changes the zoning. It does not approve the site plan. That is a process that will be for another day. So I think citizens, I would suspect, still have the opportunity to participate in the process. I am not, nor have I played one on TV, a land use lawyer. I used to adjudicate cases about it, but I had a great law clerk who would prepare me for it. So, but that's my understanding of what I've been briefed out on.
Sure. So the 2 meetings that you had with the Creston Neighborhood Association, was that with the board, or was that a meeting that they hosted for the community to participate in? And what was the turnout for those?
I think it was the association. Let me just ask, or not the board itself, but Phil, it was 4 members of the association? Yeah, 4 members of the association, ma'am.
So those 2 meetings were with the association, okay.
Yes, and I would say the turnout was relatively small, less than 20 at the first one, and probably less than 15, and maybe less than 10 at the second. One was at St. Alphonsus, I believe, and the other was at...
Is it one at Riverside? Riverside. One was at Riverside.
And just for clarification, when we do host public hearings, the city will notify residents within a certain radius. So you're right, you're absolutely right with that, even though you're not an attorney there in that area. And so that's how, with the public hearing, that's how we became aware, at least I became aware, I should say, of the concerns of the citizens, because they came to that meeting to express their concern. But not every single meeting we have, we notify residents, but because it was a public hearing, we did, just to help you to understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The second part of that question was engagement with the members.
Right.
And so we did host 2 meetings at the home where we had staff and members attend, and we provided a presentation that outlined our plan for the project. And this was very early on. I don't recall the date, but it was probably late fall. And so it was when we were early in the design process and beginning to look at methods to provide better service.
Right.
So.
And then I'll also say, I think it's thank you so much for responding to the couple that's here this evening. I don't want to butcher their name like everybody else has tonight, but thank you for responding to the email and sitting down with your staff and sitting down with the developers to try and address the concern. And I think you're right in that this is the beginning of multiple decisions, but the reason changing the zoning is so important is because once it's changed, you lose a lot of leverage as a citizen. Just to kind of help you to understand why their concern is important for someone like me is because once that change is made, then there's no turning back. And to make sure that the conversations are had and the agreements are happening early on with residents and developers is important. I think this is a really good case for the VITA that we just approved, where you're getting neighborhoods involved in kind of the decisions about the development project, and people who are going to be impacted, like we've seen in this book, which I'm assuming is accurate, really should have had sit-down discussions to kind of talk through. You know, we've seen these plans before. We've seen where projects will give land back to residents in order for there to be enough of a buffer for them. We've seen where there are some positive outcomes that can come from these types of projects. And so thank you for already starting those discussions, and I'm hopeful that they will result in mutual beneficial decisions for everyone, because you're right, Commissioner Jones, none of us would want to stand in the way of a state-of-the-art facility for our vets, but we also want to make sure that we're respectful for the neighbors that are there as well.
Thanks, Commissioner. Well said. Commissioner Allen and then Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, just a quick question. It came up, but I want to emphasize it again, is that this changes the zoning. The site plan has not been approved yet. There are some concerns about losing wetland, but the overwhelming majority I heard were about the placement on the site and those kind of things. And I want to echo what Commissioner Lanier said, just tossing this out there, not telling you what to do, but you could potentially get very creative, maybe even swap some so that the frontage along 3 Mile could remain green space, and then with the Visoski's, kind of almost do a land swap and then put yours further along the back to keep that frontage along the 3 Mile. We've seen developers get very creative with the community. I really appreciate your care and your concern for the neighbors, and I hope that continues in the development of the site plan, because that's mostly the concern that I heard.
So Commissioners, I want to clarify a couple things, and I'm actually going to call up Suzanne to do that. My understanding with this zone change, we are approving the site plan, which is part of the PRD. So maybe we can have Suzanne clarify a couple things and answer some questions, if that's okay. And then maybe we, and then maybe we can talk about some of even potentially having an added condition of approval based on some things that we would like to see resolved before it moves forward. So let me, Commissioner Kelly, did you have one comment before?
Well, I just wanted to clarify something that we did go to the Riverside meeting, but this whole issue of postcards, it comes up every so often. They were mailed out, and we do know that at the Veterans Facility that they had a new administrative assistant who unfortunately, when she got it, because we send one postcard to each address, wasn't really sure what it was and set it aside, which is why it was really important for us, Joe and I, to go back and have a listening session to make sure that questions were answered on the part of the veterans. And we did leave very satisfied that they were very excited about the project. We also recognize that it's a challenging site because of its size. So I'll leave it at that. If you have further questions, I'm happy to answer, but Suzanne, if you want to talk about the site plan, that'd be good.
The rezoning request is for a planned redevelopment district, which other communities might call it planned unit development. So what is approved is the actual project itself, which includes the site plan. So you are not only changing the zoning, you're changing the zoning for this project and the project as presented. So if you think of other PRDs you've approved, like in Belknap, we'll have neighborhoods that don't want to change a zoning just to a straight zone district. They want control over what the project looks like and how it works, which is why you use PRDs. So we've done that with bigger sites. For example, the Meyer project, the Rockford construction project on Bridge Street, that was a PRD because you wanted to make sure that you're getting this project that's being proposed. When you have a straight zone district, they can build anything in that zone district as long as it complies with the ordinance. So what they're requesting is a planned redevelopment district specific to this project and as presented to you. Now, you do have options because it is a PRD. You can put additional conditions of approval on it that you cannot do on a straight zone district. So PRDs, you'll notice in your resolution, there are already conditions that the Planning Commission suggested for approval that goes with that. The City Commission can also add additional conditions if you so desire. So if there was an additional buffer or something else that you would like to see on the eastern property line and you believe that's the only thing that's really hindering your approval, you could add an additional requirement to some effect about a separation distance or what your expectations would be for the buffer with the neighbor.
So, Commissioner, go ahead.
Well, so I'm curious now then, if they're still having conversations about the plan, how are we in a position to approve something that isn't final?
I think you'll have to talk to the Veterans Facility. My understanding is that the project as presented to you is their final plan.
But I thought
we just
heard that there was a change to the plan.
Right.
The change that you have in front of you is where they moved the drive. The drive along at the eastern property line came straight out and followed right along the property line. They modified the plan so that now that drive is adjusted further to the west as it comes into the site, but then it comes closer to the property line with the neighbor the way it was originally presented. So what they did is along 3 Mile, they shifted the drive location to the west somewhat to provide a bigger buffer towards the neighbor, but then it does come in adjacent to the property line within a couple feet as it goes further to the north.
Okay.
So, if I
Commissioner?
Would it be possible for you to give us a sense of what kind of space there is and what kind of buffer you could put in there? I'm thinking it's going to be vegetation or fence, yeah.
So that is correct. What we've done is a survey of the wooded area, the entire site. So we've identified mature trees that we are attempting to strategically locate each of the building and drives and maintain the mature vegetation. So within that area, specifically along the east property line, there's a lot of undergrowth, smaller vegetation. As you go toward 3 Mile, there is some larger mature trees, and the drive change that was just referenced is going to save that cluster of trees.
Okay. And what sort of impact might this have on your timeline? I know that you are waiting for one reason that we met at Riverside was to get things rolling because you had some, I understand that we were really in competition with other potential projects. And we did learn at the Veterans Facility that one of the reasons that this area was chosen is that ours is one of the older ones in the state, if not the oldest, in need of upgrading. So can you give us a sense of timeline and deadlines?
There's a series of timelines, Commissioner. Ian Zerbe, who is our sort of ace of the application process with the federal VA, knows the date specifically. We have a finite period of time in order to have all of the approvals, the environmentals, and everything else done. We're competing with all the other states who are seeking the federal funding. We applied last January 30th, 2017 for a VA grant for Grand Rapids and Southeast Michigan to build 2 128-bed facilities at a cost of approximately $55 million each or thereabouts. Rough math, $108 million. If I can invite Ms. Zerbe to join me at the podium, she'll be able to tell the specific dates that we're talking about.
Hello, Ann Zerbe. So we've spoken in the past before. We are actually waiting right now to hear on the VA grant application. It was submitted in January of 2017. It's a very long process to work with the VA. But we are expecting to hear any day now. At that point, we need to get through final design, have it ready to go, have our bids out for construction. We're filing for a short extension, or we plan to, if we do receive the grant, but we should have those all into them by late summer or fall in order to finalize that grant award. And so you can kind of see why time is of the essence. When we've looked at this site plan and the things that, based on what the neighbors have been sharing with us in terms of the concerns with the proximity, I know that the architects have been going out right to that property line to make sure we know exactly where it is so we can start building that buffer, understand how much room we have to kind of make sure there's some separation. And as I said, this is the architect's favorite word, but massaging that site plan so that we can condense it without affecting the kind of quality of services, the site for the veterans who are going to be living there, but accommodate to the best of our ability the concerns of the neighbors and the things that, understandably are going to be on their mind as this project moves forward or if it moves forward. So I don't know if that helps, but fall is really, we need to have all of those final bid documents in, which means we need to be through final design.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Ian the other day, okay, well, what if we don't get it done by fall? And we're approved, we're selected, we say go forward with Grand Rapids. He said, Jim, it's as simple as this. If we don't have it done, we lose the entire grant. I said, okay, why is that? She said, because there are X number of other states lined up behind us who are seeking a portion of that finite universe of resources, because the federal VA grant, state home grant program is funded at less than what the demand is by a pretty substantial proportion.
So what I'm hearing is a couple things, and commissioners, tell me if you, how you feel about this. I think there's a clear understanding and support for our veterans and wanting them to have a new facility. And I've heard, even from our last meeting, I've heard from a number of vets locally who are very supportive of this project and are excited about having a state-of-the-art facility. And so I want to be clear, and I think my colleagues already said that as well, that we really see the need for this and we want to see it in our city and we want to see this development happen. I think the sticking point is this piece with proximity to the neighbor and this buffering and the opportunity to make some, and I'm kind of looking at Suzanne too, the opportunity to make some minor modifications to increase that buffer in some way, or to at least give us assurance that has been addressed, that concern. That's the largest concern that we have heard outside of the concerns about this being just a beautiful piece of property. The Veterans Home, we recognize this is your private property and you have the right to develop it. And so we want to be really sensitive to that as well as to the neighbors. And so the buffer, the element around the buffer and proximity to the neighbor is what I'm hearing is the greatest concern. And so I'm wondering if before final site approval is done, if we could support a rezoning with a condition that the final site approval, once the buffer is finalized and what that looks like, whether it's the vegetation. Suzanne, I'd like to ask you what an average distance is from a property line when you have a significant development like this. Where are we right now and where could it be? I think that would be helpful for all of us to just know what our options are.
So if memory, I don't know if you have your site planner here. I think the closest it is 7 feet, I think, from the property line, if that sounds
Side
correct?
setback?
Yeah.
I believe it's greater than 7.
Where the road is closest to the property line?
Oh, I'm not certain of that dimension. Hold on.
Excuse us. As of right now, the current site plan, the closest, sorry. Right now, the closest housing unit to the property line is 70 feet away.
How many is that?
70.
70.
70, yes.
The house?
The closest neighborhood to the property line of the neighbor is 70 feet away. The structure.
The question, though, is the drive.
The drive is, I don't have that. It's 26 feet wide, yep, and with some parking spaces in front of the house, so.
It's not more than 10 feet in the drive area. So usually what we do is that we look at what can you plant that can be substantial. You'd want a year-round, a 4-season screen with both conifers and deciduous trees, so that you've got the low with an evergreen and then the high with a canopy tree. Is usually what we do to make sure that there's a full screen on the property line when we have situations like this. So the area that's closest towards 3 Mile would be a sufficient width where they're preserving the existing trees. The area of concern as you get closer, as the drive comes in towards the property line, we would want something probably a little bit more substantial than what they have currently, in the range of an additional 5 to 10 feet in that area. The site is very difficult because of the grades and the way that they've laid it out, that they don't have a lot of space to do some wiggle room, and they may need to get a deviation from the VA for the lane widths or other things. I mean, we can always get down to feet and inches and move things around. So an additional 5 to 10 feet in that area would be beneficial for the adjacent neighbor. It should be mentioned that the adjacent neighbor does have a zoning variance on their property, that they were allowed to build their addition closer to the property line than what would normally be allowed by ordinance. So you kind of have two different pieces working here, both the neighbor and their addition and building closer to the property line, and then how this comes in from a larger scale development adjacent to a single family home. So what typical conditions that we have for the Planning Commission in this type of circumstances, that we would recommend that you provide a distance of 5 to 10 feet additional buffer from the existing line, the outer edge, the eastern edge of the drive, and that the landscape screening to include fencing and a four-season screen is approved by the planning director. And then when it comes to plan review through the LUDS process, then we would review and approve that site plan per the conditions of the approval.
So Commissioners, that's one option, is that we approve the zone change with the condition that the buffer, I want to make sure I get this language correct, that a buffer is reviewed and approved by the planning director.
Suzanne will write it down for us.
Thank you. You can tell I wasn't on the planning commission. And that will give an opportunity to move forward with the zone change, but also give time with our planning director and the architect and the neighbor to finalize a buffer. All right. So, can I ask someone to make a motion to approve the zone change and that the applicant shall improve the buffer? Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the zone change to a PRD with the caveat that, with the condition that the applicant shall improve the buffer and increase the distance of the service drive from the eastern property line by a minimum of 10 feet from the existing proposed line, and then that the revised plan shall be subject to the review and approval of the planning director.
So moved.
Support.
All right. So,
Can I ask
questions?
one question?
Yes.
Suzanne, was the condition you just drafted in addition to the other conditions in the, okay, so I think this is in addition to what was there. Everybody understand that? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because that's how it should be. So I think it's an amendment of the resolution.
An additional condition.
Yeah, an
To
additional
add
condition, yes. Okay, so Commissioners, comments?
So for discussion's sake, I think it's important that the people who are impacted by this, that they're a part of the solution discussion. And so I don't necessarily want to put that into the motion and change it for that, but I'm sure that you all are hearing me, and if you're already starting down that path, you know, I'm sure that that will happen where there'll be multiple discussions with them. But I think whatever that solution is, I thank you, Suzanne, for coming up with a distance, because we didn't have one at first, and so to have one, but that's a start. And I think after having some discussion with the owners of the other property, and if there are other properties and those owners may not have come, I think we need to make sure that they are engaged and that there are conversations with them as well.
My understanding is this is the only adjacent property owner. The individuals we heard from last week, some of them live across the street.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Any other, Suzanne, does that give you some clear direction?
Yeah, and we'll make sure that we often have a requirement that you consult with the neighbor just to work out what they would prefer. And I know that Craig Newhouse at testimony at your public hearing had mentioned meeting with the neighbors to do that final design of the fence and other things, so we'll make sure that.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions or comments?
Mayor, is it possible during this discussion to have the couple to come to share their perspective on this discussion, since they were the ones who petitioned this body for this modification? I mean, they've been kind of listening and not able to say anything during this whole time.
Paul or Carol, would you like to weigh in on the conditional approval?
I would, thank you. Just to make it clear, Carol Ann and I are thrilled if these vets can get a good place to kind of end their playground here. This has been a piece of property that we have been privileged to be stewards of for 38 years, and all we are looking for is a good neighbor. And the way that it was laid on us did not give us that feeling. It was just kind of thrust upon us like a tsunami coming at us from the west, and it from when you look at the site, if you visit their east site, our west line, and you look at the plan, it was obvious that they weren't paying attention to us. And so I'm very happy that that Director Redford and his group are going to kind of bring us together with Tower Pinkster and start having an opportunity to engage. And Commissioner, I agree. We want to be engaged. This is not a way to have a debate. I hope that we can get into one room and hash this thing out realistically. But I also am very concerned. I want to make sure that the DEQ has an opportunity to see this. And just to make it one more time, just because it's not on the map doesn't mean that it's not a wetlands. And the DEQ will be the first one to tell you that. So that's very important.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate
welcome. Thank you. I think we all share the same goal. Good neighbors and a great place for our vets in our community. So, all right, Commissioners, any final comments? All right. With that, it is a roll call vote.
Commissioner Lanier?
Yes.
Commissioner Reppert?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Bliss?
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, next that will take us to City Commission resolutions, and we have one resolution tonight. This is a City Commission resolution considering entering into a contract with Springstead Waters Incorporated for the city manager recruitment process.
Support.
All right, so Commissioners, a couple things about this. Seems like a while ago. It was late last year, I think, that we had a subcommittee, including myself and Commissioner Lanier and Commissioner O'Connor, who read through the original responses to an RFP that we put out for a search firm to work with for the city manager search. And after we decided to terminate the contract with GovHR, we went back to that original bid list because we had ranked the firms, and we looked at our number 2 firm, which was Springstead Waters. Many of you remember this is the firm that we utilized when we went through the hiring process for our fire chief, who we are very pleased with. And we heard today a great presentation by our fire chief. And so we followed up with Springstead, and we asked for a revised proposal that they provided to us. And I'd like to have the conversation tonight about moving forward and moving forward into a contract with them to reopen our city manager search and to work with them moving forward. So I'll open it up for discussion, comments. Commissioner?
Mayor, I saw the proposed schedule, and I just want to go back to some of the conversations we've had about making sure that the review of applicants and interviews and all of that, that all of those things happen after budget cycle. So I think the proposed schedule, and I know that this was just kind of, based on what we normally do, this is what we'll present, but I just want to make sure, because it was a part of the contract, that we're all on the same page in terms of what our expectations are. And I think that having any review or any of that in June is going to be problematic when we have 4-hour meetings one week and 2-hour meetings here and all of that, and then our regularly scheduled commission work. And so that pressure, because we were experiencing that with this last search, I am hopeful that we will not duplicate this time, and that we could just have all of it starting in July so that we don't have that repeat. The other thing is that in the contract, it didn't indicate that they were going to change the profile, and that's another area that I personally believe we need to spend some time modifying the profile, because based on the communications that we've had through this process the first time, I think we're clear about what it is we truly want, and those things were embedded into that profile on like page 6 or 7, and I think that the profile should reflect what it is that we truly want, so that when we're posting it again, we can attract a candidate that knows exactly what it is that we want. I think it was a bit generic, and it was something that I expressed when it was presented to the commission, and we made at that time the decision not to modify it. So I'm going to speak strongly about modifying, because I think part of the result of what took place last time could be tied to how the structure of the profile.
Yeah.
So those are the two things based on the contract that I just wanted to mention tonight.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So I should clarify that there is no official timeline in place, and I had a conversation with the individual from Springstead Waters, Mr. Art Davis, and it's very clear that, first off, until we have a contract in place with them, really there's nothing solidified. So after we get a contract, and I'm going to ask our city attorney's office to take the lead on following up after tonight if we support this resolution, that once a contract is in place, Mr. Davis will meet individually with each commissioner and get feedback, and your input will weigh into what a final timeline looks like, and also what we would like to do with the candidate profile. We got a lot of community input into the original candidate profile, but absolutely it can be amended, and we can make revisions to it before it is reposted. So those are all conversations that we can have once we have somebody under contract, before anything is finalized. And then once we have a firm in place, they will present the final recommendation to the full commission at a committee of the whole meeting, similar to what we did earlier in the year with GovHR before things were finalized. But we would do all that once we have somebody in place that would work with us to finalize all of that. And again, even with timeline, similarly to last time, we'll have to look at the availability of all of our schedules. Or are we going to do it on Tuesdays? So all of those details would still need to be worked out and won't be finalized until it comes back to us. But thank you for raising that. Commissioner?
To follow up on what Commissioner Lanier said, just from a practical point of view, not suggesting there's a specific person that we want, but we want somebody that has some experience, and if a potential candidate might already be working for a municipality or something like that, they're in the middle of budget time as well. So
not every city has a July 1 budget.
Yeah, good point. But I don't want to limit us. One of the comments we heard was we started during Christmas time, and that hurt us. And so that's the conversation that I'll be having with this firm about timing. I want to hit the market from a timing perspective just right.
Yes. Yeah. Any other thoughts, Commissioner?
I want to thank you all for working on this for us on behalf of the commission. This sounds good. I'm open to suggestions around this table about improving the profile, but very much looking forward to getting this started again, and appreciate the fact that we heard so strongly from the community. I think that they wanted us to push reset, so happy to be doing that.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, then, I will call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It carries. All right, City Attorney, you'll follow up?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All right, next that will take us to our public hearings, and we have 2 public hearings tonight, both around the same project. So, public hearing, commissioners, can I do both of these together since they're on the same project? Okay. So we'll go ahead and do both of these public hearings together. Let me read them and assure everyone that public notice was given pursuant to state law. So we have 2 public hearings on the same project. First public hearing is a public hearing to consider an application request requesting the transfer of personal property component of an industrial facilities exemption certificate filed by Ferris Coffee and Nut Company, and then a public hearing to consider an application for a 12-year industrial facilities exemption certificate for Ferris Coffee and Nut at 601 7th Street Northwest. So I'm going to open up both of these public hearings. And we'll start by giving Kara Wood an opportunity to speak to them, and then we'll ask the representatives from Ferris Nutt to come forward and share anything that they would like, and then we'll open it up for public comment. So if you're here to speak on this project, just hold tight and we'll open it up in just a minute. Kara?
Good evening. Tonight's public hearings are related to a request filed by Ferris Coffee and Nut. They're planning an expansion at a new location, relocating from 221 Winter to a newly acquired property at 601 7th Street Northwest. We're going to pull up a map here in the agenda packet. The first public hearing is regarding a transfer request for the personal property exemption from their current location. The actual investment on that project was exceeded, and the project resulted in 33 new full-time and 6 new part-time jobs that were created as a result of that project. So we believe that this transfer request is reasonable and request your consideration of that. So as a result of this move for them, a transfer request has been filed. In addition, the second public hearing is regarding a new 12-year industrial facilities tax exemption certificate, and this is for their new growth. In order to accommodate their current and projected growth, the company has acquired a larger facility to undertake renovation and meet the needs of a new modern food processing company. The expansion will allow Ferris to remain in the city and on the northwest side, and will accommodate the company's growth for the foreseeable future. That map isn't all that clear, but if you use your imagination, it's right in the center. Okay. Oh, yeah. So the red,
If you're wondering what we're looking at, there's a screen up top there.
So the expansion project will involve about a $7.5 million land and building improvement project with $1.7 million of new manufacturing and production equipment to be added to the site. Ferris currently employs 80 full-time and 11 part-time employees, as well as 15 temporary employees. So this project will result in all of this new investment and 6 new employees at the location, with average wages of over $12 an hour plus benefits. Their existing positions range from approximately $10 an hour for entry-level packaging positions to $20 an hour or more for advanced production positions. In addition, it's worth noting that Ferris has performed on all of its commitments from previous applications, even though they may have expired or no longer in existence. This is a company that we've enjoyed a really good working relationship with, and our economic development project team reviewed this in February. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have, or invite Cody Pike, their CFO, to talk a little bit more about the company and their plans.
I just want to say, Ferris is an awesome first word company. They've been a great community partner to so many different agencies in the neighborhood, employing people, and this is a very, I'm so glad that we could keep them on the northwest side.
And in the city.
And in the city, right.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on that. This was brought before the Economic Development Project team, and I'd mentioned in the context of that in our normal way that we show this, to me, this is a little bit different. What we're doing is preserving jobs. They could have left the city. They're deciding to stay. So, the job numbers they show there are just the new ones that are added in this facility, but we're not really counting the fact that we're saving 80 full-time, 11 part-time, 15 temp jobs. The full-time jobs range from $32,000 to $125,000 a year. Those are really important statistics. Additionally, I know that Ferris, and this actually has a relationship with the Third Ward, is a really dynamic partnership with Rising Grinds Cafe, which is located in the Link Building. They're training children that are aging out of foster care, getting them food safe, certified, teaching. They're being trained as baristas. So if you go into Rising Grinds right around the corner, and that Ferris State's taking an active role in that. So they're really important. It's really important that we kept them in the city. And so I'm really excited to have this come before us tonight for public hearing.
Yeah, agreed. All right. Do you want to have an opportunity to say a few words? Can you tell we love Ferris? Yeah.
That's good. That's very good. First, I want to say thank you on behalf of Ferris Coffee and Nut Company to consider our application.
As most of you know, we've been on the west side of Grand Rapids for about 94 years. Currently, we operate out of 3 facilities, 2 of which are outside of the city. So when this building came up, it gives us enough space to move those operations onto this building. But what it also does is it allows us to invest into our future by building a state-of-the-art food processing facility. Ferris, we've been becoming more nationally recognized, and with that, we've been getting a lot larger opportunities, even with some very large local retailers. So this building allows us to accommodate those operations and those opportunities and growth. The numbers that we gave you are very conservative. That's kind of the way we approach these projects. We definitely see more growth than the numbers that we gave you. We have a history of doing that as well. But ultimately, this building allows us to accommodate those growth opportunities and stay in our hometown. And so we just appreciate the opportunity for you guys to consider our application.
Thank you. Thank you, Cody. And you are going to keep the coffee shop on winter open?
Correct.
That's my understanding? Okay.
Correct. And the new facility will have more of a public showcase retail area as well. And so the cafe at 227 Winter will remain with Grand Valley occupying that building.
Great. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Cody? Commissioner?
Just to thank you, because 5 years we'll be celebrating your 100th years here, which is pretty amazing. So happy to have a local business, and to Commissioner Allen's point, retention is just as important as growth, though. Thank you for staying in this city.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? All right. If you want to take a seat, we'll open it up for public comment. So if you are here to speak tonight on this request by Ferris Coffee and Nut, now is an opportunity to come forward. We ask that you share your name and the city that you live in, and you'll be given up to 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Miller, you're coming up. Do you drink Ferris coffee? Are you going to answer that?
That's a hardball question.
I know, sorry.
Why don't I have my people get back to your people on that?
Okay, deal.
Right, what is a military record, okay? Why should veterans pay more taxes to pick up the slack that Ferris? I'm not saying we need more coffee for senior citizens. At Arby's is 48 cents a cup all day. Hang on to your cup, you can sneak it back in. Wendy's is due for 53%. McDonald's was hauled into court, and we don't have any records of what happened on McDonald's coffee. But with the monopoly scandal in the 90s, so 24 executives got off, swindled the public for over $1 million. Coffee at McDonald's ranging up to why is this necessary? And speaking of veterans, there's too much sophistry in the planning considerations. Any career prostitute is going to have better housing than the beds that are going to be wiped out there up on Monroe. So, they'll lose 75% of the beds statewide, and they, in all the sophistry, they never consider. There's a building next door, which I've frequented dozens of times on Coit, address on Coit 300, and the bus still stops there. Your medical mess 13 still stops there, and why can't that be converted for veterans housing? So nobody up there, since we had commissioners back early in the century, seemed to have veterans background, but nobody's considered, 75% of beds statewide, Mr. Allen, 75% of veterans statewide bed are going to be wiped out, and that's a travesty. You're not thinking of veterans at all. So many thanks, and I'm not biased, an open-minded guy. I'm not biased against Ferris Coffee, but not that many employees for all the tax breaks they're getting on this. They seem to have an admirable record keeping the near west side clean, and at one time they were beefing about being pulled into GGRI districts, various districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right, others who wish to be heard on the Ferris Coffee request? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close that public hearing. I'm going to close both public hearings, and both of those items will be referred back to Committee of the Whole. All right, next that will take us to our last opportunity for public comment tonight. So if you are here to speak about anything that is on your heart and mind, now is an opportunity to come forward. We'll let Mr. Townsend go first. And I know you know the rules, but I'll just remind everyone else, we ask that you share your name, the city you live in, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Johnny Townsend, Delaware, 10 Delaware, Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Welcome.
I'm here to speak. I only brought part of what I wanted to speak about, so I got a little bit of it up there. I remembered reading the book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest, and also watching the movie. And I never figured I would be in an institution out there where I'm at now. This is about where I'm at now. I'm at a place where I joined this place because they said you didn't have to pay for prescription drugs, you didn't have to pay for doctor's appointments, and I got into this thing and I found out that it's not necessarily what you're looking at. If you can look at that there, you can see where I went to the hospital with my blood pressure 238 over 134. That's after going to see their PAC. And after seeing the PAC, he sent me home saying that, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You just got arthritis. I don't have a history of arthritis. Later on that evening, I had to go into emergency with my blood pressure 235, what it is there, over something.
Over 128.
Yeah, and they had to stop alongside the road to administer emergency service. And they telling me still, the PCA that took my blood pressure, he didn't take it. He just sent me home. And he's not only, I've talked to the manager there, and he tells me that I cannot see the CO. But what I'm saying is that the type of place that these people are running, I'll have more information when I come down here because I didn't bring their report. He didn't check my blood pressure. I went in a few weeks later after that there. He checked my feet, he checked me for diabetes without taking my shoes off and explained to me that he could do that there. These people are getting money from the government to take care of old people, and what they're doing is ripping the government off. There's a German lady there that have high blood pressure, 82 years old. They gave her some soup, sauerkraut and corned beef soup that had so much salt in it that it would have killed an elephant. They said that we take diet foods, but they give every one of us the same thing. So I'd like to know who is the commissioner of my district. I live at 10 Delaware. I have no idea who's it. It's 49507. I think it's the first ward commissioner.
Yeah, I bet you we
I
can
would like
find
to make an appointment to see you to come in to bring the information that I'm talking about and show it to you. So I would like to get your number before I leave and bring it and come in and talk to you.
Might want to talk to the county commissioner too.
Who is that?
Is that Jim Talent?
We'll find out, Mr. Townsend.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk to TV 13 if I don't get no answer.
Okay, well, we're glad you're doing okay. Okay. I don't know about that. We're just glad you're okay. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Hey, good evening again, John Rothwell, Second Ward. Mayor Bliss and Commission, if we've got to come up and give our name and where we're from, it'd be nice if the people coming up on ordinances and changes that we don't know, because you are Facebook Live now, had to state their name also, because they're coming up and we have no idea who they are. I'm trying to write articles for newspapers and people
Good
leave
feedback.
before it is. So if you just say, hey, state your name and the corporation you're from or your position would be great in upcoming things that be help the people out on Facebook Live and people here. So have a great night and thank you.
Thank you, John. That's good feedback. We'll do that in the future.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Benitez, and I am the unit president of the Grand Rapids Police Department Dispatch Center. I'm here with many of my coworkers, a couple supervisors. Our department learned about 18 hours ago that the interim city manager, Mr. DeLong, had been in discussions with the Kent County Sheriff's Department for approximately 9 months in regards to consolidating the dispatch centers. Neither the police department nor the dispatch center were included in any of those discussions until just recently, I'm told, when the chief and a couple of the deputy chiefs were included. We're here to just place on record our opposition to the dispatch consolidation. I think that the closed-door private meetings between Mr. DeLong and the Sheriff's Department, they do not lend to the transparency that the city and especially the police department are striving to provide to the citizens. We believe that a significant level of disservice will be provided to the residents of Grand Rapids by following through with the consolidation and the high standards of customer service that were achieved by former city manager Mr. Sundstrom will be diminished. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. All right, others wish to be heard? Hi, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Bliss. Ryan Jeanette, I live at 964 4 Mile Road. I haven't been here for a while, and I apologize for that.
Oh, it sounds like some people can't hear you. Yep, just talk a little bit into the, there
Sorry.
you go. Nope, that's okay.
I apologize for not being here. I've been not in very good health over the last couple of months. Last night I spoke at the GRPS school board meeting. It was my first one, and I spoke in support of special education there. And I would like to touch back on some points that I made there and build upon them tonight. I ended that particular speech with a quote by a man named Fred Rogers, which more commonly known as Mr. Rogers. And this quote is, "There are 3 keys to success. The first is to be kind. The second is to be kind. And the third is to be kind." I chose that particular quote is because what I am seeing and what I am understanding is that kindness has almost had no impact in no way, shape, or form with how the city is run, both at the school level and many other different levels. Now, I know the City Commission has absolutely nothing to do with Grand Rapids Public Schools. But these children that are in these special education classes, these children that are affected by the Director Lamar, are the people that live in each one of your wards. And I've heard almost absolutely nothing from any of the commissioners about calling for Lamore's resignation or calling for her termination or calling for the termination or resignation of the superintendent to help solve this issue. Now, I'm not after anybody's head. I'm not calling for anybody's resignation or firing other than Lamore, which there was a 7-page petition that was signed by over 700 people that was completely disregarded and that was called a smear campaign by the superintendent. And I just find that both disrespectful and basically just unkind to the efforts and the heart that was put into these kids, into the effort to protect these children. I plead to the Grand Rapids City Commission, state your opinion on this matter. You may have no say in what happens there, but you can let the people know how you feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, others wish to be heard?
Jim Howe, City of Grand Rapids. Tonight's been like a whirlwind. I come up here a lot asking for consideration and hearing the voice, and tonight you all have forced these developers to go back and redesign their plans over one couple's concern, which is amazing. It's great precedent. I hope that we can apply that in the future towards other developments. I know in our ward, 445 Knapp, is about to have that same problem, where they're going to be building right at the property line and alleys becoming a road and all this other wonderful things that those residents are going to be upset about. My concern is coming before this body is going to be the zoning ordinances, in which it's going to allow a lot more things by right, in which these conversations that happened tonight would not even take place. So I know we have a public hearing scheduled in a couple weeks for that, which is really important. But I'd also like you guys to reflect on tonight as that comes forward. If we didn't have the public hearing, they would never have gotten the postcard. He wouldn't have known his game preserve is turning into veteran housing. And we would stop that for a lot of developments. I've heard Commissioner Allen say that some of these things being proposed aren't even possible by developers to do because it would cost too much. But we're building an ordinance for them to do it. So therefore someone's going to do it. And I have concerns about the zero lot line. I know it'd be great for affordable housing, but it's not restricted to nonprofits. So just like the payment in lieu of taxes, where it's a good benefit for a for-profit company, for-profit companies will take advantage of the non-zero lot line ordinances. So I like the idea of them, but I like the idea of them with community input. That's the one thing we've always come and asked for, is to make sure we're doing good community engagement. I knew of the Veterans Facility back in November because I'm on the Neighborhood Association's email list, so they alerted us that there was going to be a meeting at Riverside Middle. So we were aware of that, which is a plug for neighborhood associations, that they are doing these things, so if you were a member, you would have known. So I just ask that as we look at the zoning ordinance coming forward, whatever the reason the Planning Commission decided to make those extreme changes, that you guys take a step back and say, is this going to eliminate the neighborhood voice or the neighbor's voice by these areas, and who is going to be affected by that? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, others who wish to be heard?
Let's Miller back. Going back to the artificial financial deadlines for the state veterans facility, we're saying, well, there's a whole rush to get some money. Well, let's think abroad. What if veterans projects across the nation from Tampa to Tacoma are way better? If they're not going to knock down, kick out 75% statewide of the veterans hospital beds there. Secondly, just to look at your due diligence, what you did. We have a veterans park, okay, going back to the Civil War. This is your City Hall site. You blew $1 million on the Veterans Park there to improve it. Knocked down 2 bus shelters, one there and across the street at 20 Fulton, the old Grand Rapids Press site, and you obliterated all memory of World War II. Astonishing. Never seen anywhere else where I've been in the world. There's no record of World War II. You put up backup monuments and put our heroes who passed away in World War II are listed as Korean War deceased, you know? Nobody's walking around there. I mean, the DGRI creeps. Bring back the Downtown Alliance, which was a bottom-up organization. Nobody reviewed it at all. So I said, I think of Paris, my years there. You go into those churches, Saint-Germain-des-Prés, you'd see about 300-400, a wall like that of all the losses in World War I. They at least know which world war these fellows died. You obliterate it all, and it was just rubber stamp right through again and roll over the veterans. So this is the kind of atmosphere we're dealing with. Go into Veterans Park, okay? Doesn't happen anywhere else. You go wander around Germany and you see dozens of sites in towns have been abandoned who lost, they would put a photo up for each veteran who passed away in World War I in Germany. So we remember them that way, but towns disappear. But they remember over there. I mean, this kind of stupidity, smug stupidity we get from this commission just does not happen anywhere else in the world.
How could you forget World War II?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. All right. Others who wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close that opportunity for public comment, and I will turn to my colleagues, and I'll start down here with Commissioner Jones. Have you jumped into that cake yet?
No, that's going to be after the meeting.
Okay. You're so patient.
Thank you. I want to say thanks to all who came out on this evening, and I want to especially thank Pastor Emmett Smith Harrison and Pastor James Cagney Jones for hosting us on this evening. Really appreciate, again, the presence of all those who came out on this evening. Thank you.
I'd like to echo those same sentiments, and thank you for your service on the Civil Service Board as well as the Public Safety. We appreciate your engagement with the city, and thank you again for opening your doors. And to everyone who had something to share, I appreciate hearing from you and taking those comments into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Park?
Yeah, thank you all for coming. The only time I've ever been in this building was for a conversation on racial reconciliation, so it's fun to be out here in the community, and thank you for hosting, and thanks for everybody who shared tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner?
So I see my very dear friend Carl Wilmers in the audience. Carl is a tireless poll worker who works for the clerk's department. He's been doing it for years. And when I was worshiping here every Sunday, he had to come tell me about something that's going on in the neighborhood. So I happened to bump into him on Sunday, and he said, I have something that I want you to mention. So if I leave and don't mention this, I'm in deep trouble. And so Mr. Wilmers would ask me to ask James and Eric if it's possible that we might open up the refuse dump a little early, since we don't have snow on the ground. There's a lot of leaves building up in yards, and maybe folks might be able to drop them off as opposed to leaving them in their yards, because right now it's scheduled to open in April. So I don't need an answer right now, but Carl, I did what you asked me to do.
And it's a good recommendation.
Yeah.
You can.
You might want to talk with James first.
Yeah. Well,
Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here so that we could have one of our community nights out. And thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I especially want to thank all of those, James Redford for coming, Judge Redford, and everyone from the Veterans Facility who've been working through this very rigorous and difficult process. So, and thank you for hosting yet another meeting at the Veterans Facility. It really mattered a great deal to those folks there. And to the Vasaskis, I think better known as the Swamp Creatures, am I correct? Okay, according to this. Thank you for coming too.
Yeah, thank you. Interim
What else
City.
I want to say, she's here, but, oh, there she is. Stacy, dynamite job on the Neighborhood Summit. Congratulations. It was amazing. If you haven't been, sign up next year.
Yes.
So my answer is yes, we'll look at it. So thank you for the suggestion, and thanks, Carl.
Thanks. City Attorney? Okay. So I am going to add my thanks to everyone who came out tonight. Really appreciate you coming. I am also going to echo a huge thanks to Stacy Stout and the entire team that made the summit possible on Saturday. It was really amazing. It was a joy to be there. My favorite part of the day was spending time with the kids at the Kids Summit. I was able to read to them and dance with them and had a great time. And then last, I want to thank everyone who's here from the Veterans Facility. So I come from a long line of veterans. So my grandpa served in the Navy in World War II. My dad served in Vietnam as a Marine. Out of my 6 brothers, 4 of them are in the Army. 1 served in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. And I see firsthand the impact that serving our country has on families and the challenges they face as they age. So I want to say thank you to all of you for caring so deeply about our vets and also for bearing with us as we work through these challenges with the neighbors. But please know how much we appreciate you. So with that, I will call it a night and wish everyone safe travels because we're seeing a little bit of snow out there. So have a good night. We're adjourned.